Well, as I mentioned earlier, just to take a talk, because there's a lot of talk about real revolutionaries and who's revolution. Just quickly, in case anyone was not aware from earlier, from either my show or just from the news earlier, Tupac's mother,
Mm-hmm.
Afeni Shakur, um, former Black Panther, part of the Brooklyn 21, passed away yesterday evening at her home in California.
Yeah.
Cause of death is cardiac arrest, I believe, from
Really.
from earlier. And as I mentioned earlier, Afeni Shakur's legacy is so much more than being the mother of one
Yeah.
of the greatest rappers. We can debate about who's better, Tupac or Biggie, but you know, she struggled like any person. I mean, she dealt with so much between her activism, child
Yeah.
rearing, the other struggles. Because I mean, it's not like the FBI, like when you win your case, because she was exonerated of all
Mm-hmm.
the charges against her. She helped with the legal case against her and her co-defendants. But it's not like people let you when you beat the U.S. government. When they're trying to get you a conspiracy and stuff. It's not like they let you walk away and get thrown a parade and all this other stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, life gets hard, and she struggled with drug abuse and other things, but she overcame that.
Mm-hmm.
To later on, upon Tupac's passing, basically managing the empire. We've
Right.
still had
Right.
music being released from him
Yeah.
years afterwards. I mentioned there's a performing arts center here in Atlanta after him that she started. So just wanted to just drop that in there. It's definitely, I mean, it's just like every time, it's like
She's
every week it's somebody
I
new.
know. That's the
Um,
crazy, and I'm following the story
it's
with
wild.
Prince.
She wasn't that old.
The story with Prince is really, really shocking to me because
Yeah.
it's just I'm so surprised that he didn't have his estate in order, and they're talking about over $300 million worth of estates and assets that now the courts have to decide what's going to happen to it. And they had their first hearing, I believe, on today. So it's really just going along with what you said in terms of it's a shock after a shock after a shock.
Right.
2016 is
And
a bad
even
year.
with,
If you're an artist, I don't know who you
yeah,
pray to or whatever, like, but if you're an activist, it's a really bad year in terms of people we've lost along the way. And Tupac's mother, and it was I remember her. I appreciate what you said in terms of her legacy being so much more than just Tupac. But I think everyone's first introduction to her, at least mine, was Dear Mama. And just
with
listening
Dear
to,
Mama.
yeah, how he was introducing her and how he spoke of her, and despite all the things that all the ways that he mistreated other women, he still had this baseline respect for his mother. So that was a real shocker to
I
see
think
this
that's
thing.
like the anthem. I think that's like the anthem, for like, I know one of my brothers, like, he's a big Tupac fan, but Dear Mama is like at the top of his list. I think for so
Yeah.
many people that I knew growing up, like Dear Mama was like the anthem, like that just in a nutshell. No matter what the struggle was, even if your mama was grounding you and you felt like she was the worst person on
Dear
earth, it's just
Mama.
like at the end of the day, that's your mom's. That's the
Yep.
only moms you've been blessed with, and she's always the queen. So like, yeah, her legacy, like everybody knows her and got introduced to her. Like I mentioned before, I have kind of revolutionary parents. My stepfather was a Black Panther.
Hmm.
My father trained acupuncture under Matulu Shakur, who was Afeni's
Really?
husband right after Tupac was born. Yeah,
Wow. So you're you're
but
you're deeply
Harlem,
connected with the.
Harlem. Yo, I'm like revolutionary up. You know what I'm saying? No, seriously though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was talking to I just repeat this a little bit from earlier, but when I was talking to my stepfather earlier about this, because I'm like, we lose a few years ago when Baba Chokwe Mumba, another Black nationalist, a lawyer from the struggle and stuff, who passed away. He was the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. I mentioned it
Hmm.
before. When he passed away a few years ago, we keep losing people, right? When we're talking about the
Yeah.
movement, they're losing people, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking about revolution. So it's really interesting for old heads like my stepfather, other people to watch all of us talking about revolution. They nod their heads and they approve, because we talk about trying to get the Black left involved. And I try to talk to my stepdad some more about how do we talk to certain people, and it's just about knowing who to reach. And I think the campaign, there's a cadre of people that could be reached who are down,
Hmm.
but like, you know, who are down, but at the same time, they're not being talked to. But this is not their end game. They're not about electoral politics, but how do we leverage this conversation into the change they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about Afeni, and he was what recognized, he's like, you got to understand what she was doing. and
Yeah.
how hard what she was doing. She was pregnant with Tupac at the time. She was on trial. She was pregnant. She was, she was hustling. She was trying to get herself off. She was working she worked as a paralegal at some point in time for the
Hmm.
main lawyer in the case. She was helping working on the other defendants' cases, her co-defendants' cases as well too. Again, she's doing all this. She's pregnant, right?
Hmm.
It's late 70s. Late 60s, early 70s, yeah, late 60s, early 70s. I mean, that was not necessarily the easiest time to be a black woman, a
Yeah.
black person, a black woman,
A
let
black
alone a single
militant.
black woman with
Yeah.
any of
At
this,
that.
a black militant woman at that. So
Right.
her legacy is like really deep. And you can see some of the tension through their own childhood and their own life because it's really difficult when you grow up with conscious parents, but then you grow up living in the world with everybody else. I
Hmm.
mean, it is a lot of tension. It's only until you're an adult that you can begin to understand, respect, and really think about like what your parents went through. So when
Yeah.
I'm saying these people like we need to be balanced, we need to be strong when we talk to people, but we need to be balanced in our approach. That's not because I'm not sensitive to what other people might be doing to us.
Hmm.
It's because I look at my stepfather, I look at my mother, I look at the other people in my life, I look at Baba Chokwe Lumumba, who was a brilliant attorney and litigator, and he did not care about pulling no punches, and he walked with a very stick. At the same time, he was able to come to the table and work and do
But
what
you know
needs to be
what?
done. And you would never think that a black militant would
Yeah.
become mayor in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
That
Let
was
me jump in
wild.
there. Let me
And
jump in there
so
because
go ahead.
here's when you say the black revolutionaries, like we're losing a lot of them, the black left, people who really we could have argued whether or not they should have latched on to Sanders or should Sanders have gone after them a lot more because it's not the black Democratic establishment, it's not your Sunday go to church black people that would have identified with Bernie Sanders as much as the black revolutionary, as much as the black left. And you said something important is that we're losing a lot of them. They're getting old, they're dying, and they're passing away. And I'm afraid that it's being replaced by this faux revolutionary, this stay woke kind of foolishness, that kind of thing. That's what's being replaced, and I'm a little afraid of what that means for that legacy, that great rich legacy.